Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Robins on the Wire, a Bristol Live podcast covering all things Bristol City. As per usual, I'm Dan Carter, the Bristol City reporter at Bristol Live, and joining me today is Jack Buchanan to look back at another week of action at South Bristol. So Jack, it's obviously been not too long since we last spoke, but how are you doing?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Managed to make it to the game on Saturday, which was nice. First competitive game I've seen under Struber.
Yeah, so obviously that's the 0-0 draw with Charlton we're talking about there. We'll go through that as well as the other sorts of happenings around Ashton Gate so far over the last week. So I guess to start with, what was your feeling heading to the ground on Saturday? Because from a lot of the fans I've spoken to, there seems to be quite a sense of confidence after the opening day.
Yeah, it was a very big sort of feeling of confidence. I went up to the flag day at the Three Lions, and there was a bloke going around asking for score predictions, and it wasn't me. To clarify, it wasn't me. But everyone was kind of going sort of 2-1, 3-1. There were a couple of 2-0s. There was a 4-0 or something like that. I was like, that feels a bit ambitious. But yeah, everyone seemed to think we'd kind of move on, get the professional job done. It wasn't going to be anything spectacular, but it would be another 3 points. And well, obviously, it didn't work out like that in the end.
How was Flag Day? Because I know we spoke to Gerhard about it. I think Ross from ITV brought it up to him, and I'll be honest, I don't think he knew what it was before he was asked. But from the pictures I saw, our reporters down there, it looked as eventful as ever.
Yeah, it was good. It was loud. The police shut off the road for us for like 25 minutes or so in the end, so that was nice. But yeah, I only really got out there to get a few good photos, to be honest. I think but yeah, it was a good experience. It was nice to kind of get back into the rhythm of things at the start of the season, to be fair.
Yeah, and it kind of summed up the atmosphere a bit, didn't it, on Saturday? I think, it was a sellout at Ashton Gate, and certainly heading into the build-up, it felt like a real big occasion, which, there has been quite a few of done in BS3 recently, hasn't there? Because you think back to those playoff games, the run-in, that Preston game, although maybe the performance today will come onto that, made it reflect the crowd. The crowds down there have been really positive. I know it's a big gap in between recent home games. It's been really good atmosphere down there.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a bit of a weird atmosphere, I thought, on the end on Saturday, because the game didn't really live up to sort of expectations that had maybe been raised, I think, from the first two performances. After the first sort of half hour, the atmosphere kind of seemed to go a little bit flat at points from City fans. The Charlton fans, like, fair play to them, they were pretty loud throughout. But yeah, it was a weird one. The atmosphere, like you said, before the game, and the crowd being 25,000, I think it was in the end, 24 and something. But yeah, it just wasn't quite as loud as we've seen it on some of those nights. You think back to West Brom, Middlesbrough, Preston, Watford, Sunderland last season, where it was like, right, we need to win this to keep our hopes alive, things like that. It just never really seemed to get to that sort of point. I don't know if that was maybe down to what was happening on the pitch, though, to be fair.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Sometimes it's hard to quite gauge why the atmosphere is the way it is. But I think if we take it back to 1:45, as it now is, when team news landed, if we go to the Bristol City team, it was unchanged from the win at Bramwell Lane the week before. So it was Radek Vitek in goal with the back three of Rob Atkinson, Zach Viner, George Tanner. Once again, you hear Akawa started at left wing back. Jason Knight was partnered by Adam Randall in the middle of the park, and at right wing back was Ross McCrory. Scott Twine and Alice Mehmeti as the two 10s, I think we're still calling them that, and Emil Rees up front. But probably the headline news actually that stood out to most people when team news landed, including myself, was that Fally Mayulu was back on the bench, Jack. So I guess we spoke about him quite a lot last week. Were you surprised to see him among the subs?
I wasn't necessarily surprised to see him among the subs. I was definitely surprised to see him get any minutes. But to be fair to him, I thought it was probably the best version of Fally Mayulu we've seen for, I think it was a year yesterday when we played Millwall, and obviously that was his last goal for the club. He looked hungry. He looked energetic. He certainly offered more for me than Armstrong did when he came on. I think there was a notable difference in kind of the levels between the two on Saturday afternoon, and it makes you think maybe, just maybe, there might still be a bit of a chance left for him if he can get a couple more cameos like that. If he can come on and have a couple of shots on target or something like that on Friday night at Derby, which we'll obviously come on to later, then maybe there's still something left for him at Ashton Gate, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it's, regardless of what you made of his performance, I think it can only be a good thing that he's in squads. Because, I've written it today, it's the first one he's appeared in since the Wolves FA Cup game back in January. So I think he only played 2, maybe 3 games while he was out on loan. I think one of those was in the Cup and most of them were off the bench. So, just to get some minutes in his legs, because other than 45 minutes at Cheltenham, it's been so long since he played any football. Obviously, he was in for, instead of Ephraim Yeboah, I'd imagine he's going to be playing for the 21s tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him kind of float between the two squads, as Elijah Morrison has done at points. I guess the other news I've seen a few fans point to on Twitter over the last few days is the fact, Josh Stokes wasn't involved. There were a couple of younger players not involved. Elijah wasn't on the bench. Are you hoping to see them maybe get another run out after impressing, albeit in short periods, against Milton Keynes?
Yeah, you'd hope that they kind of get their chances. I mean, Struber's been quite clear, I think, hasn't he, since he came in, that they'll get their chance if they play well enough. And you'd think that Morrison, and from what I've seen, Josh Stokes as well in that cup game, did play well enough to get another chance throughout the season, hopefully before the window closes, which will be kind of maybe give us a bit more of an idea as to whether they're going to stick around or end up going out on loan come the end of this transfer window or January. But you'd like to hope that certainly someone like Josh Stokes, when we did lack that bit of creativity, as I'm sure we'll come on to try and break down Charlton's low block at times, he might kind of help unlock that defence at points. Yeah,
he's one I'm planning to ask about in the press conference this week, and I think naturally so, there's been a few questions on Twitter about, where is he? Again, this is probably more my opinion than anything Gerhard's told us yet, but I think back to what he said about Fally after the Sheffield United game, about saying just the lack of football and feeling he needed a bit of time to build himself up. Gerhard mentioned, I think it was after the pre-season game at Cheltenham, that it was a case of Josh Stokes had a bit of a knock in pre-season and missed a bit of football. So it might be as simple as he's a bit behind a few of the other players, fitness-wise and sharpness-wise. And also, we've said it time and time again, this is a big squad now at his disposal. There are a lot of players in there. And whittling it down to 11 starters and 9 subs is probably as hard as it's been for any Bristol City manager since the days of Lee Johnson, you'd probably say.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's 100% sort of the strongest overall squad we've had since that sort of 2017 to 2019, when we were kind of trying to push into those playoffs under Lee Johnson, when we had the likes of Adam Webster, Thomas Callas, Casey Palmer, Da Silva, etc., all kind of floating around that same squad, albeit on loan or permanent or whatever. I think this is certainly the most depth and probably the best squad we've had on paper for a good sort of 5 or 6 years now. And yeah, naturally people have to miss out on opportunities at times.
Yeah, I think so. If we turn our attention to the actual game now, I think probably for the first 15-20 minutes, it was kind of what we come to expect of the Gerhard Struber team, wasn't it? City really trying to use those wing backs. Ross McCrory got into some really good areas. I remember Mehmeti came close with a shot that just narrowly missed the post. I think probably for those first 20 minutes, although there hadn't been the goal, I think most people inside Ashton Gate were probably thinking, oh yeah, this is kind of what we expected. They're going to get something out of this.
Yeah, definitely. It did start well, like you said, and rightfully so. You mentioned McCrory was getting into some really, really good positions again. It's nice to see that's not really changed from the back end of last season, and we saw against Sheffield United as well. But we spent a lot more time sort of pinned in against Sheffield United and absorbing pressure before we hit them on a quick break. But yeah, we looked sharp, we looked positive for that 20 minutes, and then Charlton just slowly sort of started to grow into the game a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think it's something we mentioned after the Sheffield United game, is that although this team are incredibly fun to watch going forward, and they undoubtedly are, the way that Gerhard wants them to play is that there's going to be space in behind. And there was a couple of times, wasn't there? I thought it was that Viner in particular, and Rob Atkinson will come on to, defended quite well, but there were a couple of early warning signs that Charlton were quite willing to counter and get through the thirds just as quickly as City were.
Yeah, a lot of it kind of came down our left hand side, I thought, in that first half. Not quite sure who it was off the top of my head playing on that right hand side for Charlton. Sorry, not Cheltenham. But he was finding that space in behind you a few times and kind of being able to cut inside or play a ball across. But that's kind of, you ask for exciting football. I suppose you've got to be open to the fact you got to concede a few goals. You look at Liverpool on Friday night in the opening game of the Premier League, electric going forwards, but Konate was all over the place at the back, and obviously Semenyo scoring 2 goals is a bit topical as well. So yeah, if you play that sort of nice attacking style of football when you're committing so many bodies forward, you are going to naturally leave that space for teams to grow into games.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it there. I thought actually that first half, the way City dealt with the counter was really good. I thought, it's probably not a surprise that Rob Atkinson's having to do quite a bit of work with you ahead of him. I think we'll mention him later because I was slightly surprised to see him come off when he did. Because I thought he was really bright again and battled like really well both in and out of possession. But I thought, considering the way in which Charlton were trying to hurt them and the way we've seen Nathan James's teams play in the past, while it might have not been the way Gerhard wanted the team to play and it might not have suited the attacking players, it seemed to play right into Rob Atkinson's hands. Because I think we mentioned how good he was at Sheffield United. That was as good as I can remember him playing on Saturday. He was absolutely superb, whether it be on or off the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think City put out some of his stats earlier from the game. It was like eight clearances, 3 tackles, 2 interceptions. Just looking at it in front of me, he was sensational, wasn't he? So I think he's reminding everyone, like we spoke about it the other day. I think a lot of people forgot just how good he is because he was out injured for obviously almost 2 years in the end, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Since we last saw him in a City shirt. So yeah, sensational performance once again, and I think he'll only kind of get better as the season goes on, providing he can stay fit. There was that little scare in the second half where they were looking at bringing the stretcher on for him, but he battled on through, which was good. But hopefully that doesn't kind of turn into anything more sinister.
Yeah, I think Gerhard mentioned in the build-up, he's been feeling his back. I think we spoke about that last week, and he's undoubtedly someone they're going to have to look after. But it kind of brings me on to something we probably should have mentioned during the team news: the fact that Rob Dickie was on the bench. I was thinking when team news came out, I was slightly surprised, mainly because I wondered if Atkinson would make it. But I was just thinking back to last season, if you'd said at any point that Rob Dickie, a fully fit, not suspended Rob Dickie, wouldn't be getting into a Bristol City team that's playing a back three, I think most fans have been shocked. And while I wonder how long that will remain the case, it shows the strength and depth that City have got back there, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, it'll be interesting to see how long it does stay the case, because I still think, as much as I like George Tanner as that right-sided centre half, I do think we might be better served kind of moving to Viner on the right, Dickie and Atkinson middle and left. And then you can always play McCrory out on the left. We saw him do it excellently at times last season and even at points in pre-season this year. And then you can have Tanner as your right-sided wing-back, and it just maybe shores you up a little bit more. I think Hirakaw's done very well so far, but we'll kind of come on to it when we look into the Derby game, I suspect. I think there may be 1 or 2 changes for me now that we've got Rob Dickie back.
Yeah, there wasn't much in the way of goal-mouth action to talk about in the first half. Obviously, I don't think there was a shot on target for City in the first half. No. And after the break, one of those where you really thought they'd managed to sneak an opener early in the second half when Mehmeti, I think it bobbled through to him after a bit of work from Emil Rees, wasn't it? And he gets a left-footed shot away, and it looks like it's beating Kaminsky in the goal, but just the upright keeps it out. I mean, I don't know where you sit, Jack, in Ashton Gate, but it's one of those where you're just waiting and hoping that somehow it's going to find its way into the top corner.
Yeah, I mean, I sit right at the front of section 82, so I had an excellent view of it, and I think he maybe could have hit it earlier, but it was some really good defending from Charlton to kind of force him away onto his left foot. We know it's not his strong foot by any means. He is always looking to cut onto his right where he can, and I think the Charlton defence kind of knew that. It was quite obvious at times that they were trying to show him on the outside, show him onto his left, and you do nullify him a little bit. But yeah, it looked like he'd snuck it in, and Viner came close about 5 or 10 minutes later as well, didn't he, at that near post from the corner. But yeah, it did look like he'd snuck it in, but not quite, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was just, I think we probably need to talk about Anis a bit. I think there's been quite a bit of discourse on social media, hasn't there, about some people saying it was another really good positive game from him. Others saying that they felt he was a bit of a frustrating watch. I'd be interested to know where you kind of sit on that one, because undoubtedly he probably carried City's biggest threat throughout the whole game. And equally, there were like a handful of moments where you just felt he could have perhaps done a little bit more, a little bit quicker.
Yeah, it's another one. Like I've said on the past two episodes, I think I love him dearly, and I think he is an incredible footballer. And like you said, he did carry a lot of our attacking threat for large parts of Saturday. But there were times where that attacking threat could have been greater if he'd got his head up a little bit sooner. I think it was quite late in the game as well. I think Max Bird was on the pitch, and Mehmeti went through, and it might have been nearish to when he won the free kick, actually, right at the end. but he just he didn't get his head up in time. I think Sykes was wide open over on the far side. It's like if he gets his head up and plays that ball, we all know how good Sykes is at getting a ball into the box, or he can drive in and hit it himself. But yeah, he had a very good game, I think, but maybe one or two passes away from it being quite as good as he has been at times this season, or well, back in the last season as well.
I remember speaking to Liam Manning about him probably just before the run-in, maybe. I remember him saying how important a role he'd have during the playoff campaign. I think one of the things that always stood out to me when we spoke to both Anis and Liam about him was how he always felt he was at his best when he was playing at pace and doing everything with pace. And I think you kind of almost saw that in the game at Bramall Lane last week, that it was a case of whenever he didn't have time to think and they're playing on the counter, some of those the outside of the foot pass that sets Reece on his way for, I think it was McCrory's goal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
His finish, he doesn't, because it's coming at him so quick, he doesn't have time, he just uses instinct. When he's playing on instinct and pace to his game, I genuinely don't think there's probably many players better in that position in the division. What was noticeable to me on Saturday was that there were a couple of times where he'd almost get on it, he'd beat his man and then stop a little bit, or just that little bit of a delay. And I think, again, we've said it a couple of times already, but Charlton deserve praise for me because, I think if you don't give him options, he has to stop and think. But you just wonder if there were a couple of times whether it's just a first-time pass or like a Havard shot, or rather than trying to beat your man. I don't know. There was just a couple of moments where you just felt, and it's because we know how good he can be. I think we saw it at times last season. We saw it at Bramall Lane. Yeah, when he's fit and firing to the top level, he can tear teams apart at will. And what was frustrating Saturday was that he showed almost that he can do that, but didn't quite have the last bit needed.
Yeah, he absolutely tore through them at times. But the issue was, like you say, he just didn't quite have that final pass or couldn't get the shot away, things like that. And like I said, credit to the Charlton defence. I think they nullified him as best you can at the moment because he is playing with a lot of confidence. But I think the more of the ball we have, sometimes the worse version of Anis Mehmeti you see, because he has, like you say, more time to think, more time to where the ball's slowed down for him, and he's not just like, right, one touch inside, I'll hit it, or I'll play the ball, or I'll play it first time. And there were a few times in the second half down in front of me, sort of down City's left-hand side, where he'd beat his man, and then he'd almost freeze up a little bit. And it's like you've got one or two options on the edge of the box. You could swing it in, you take on another man and hit it. But he just, couldn't quite seem to make his mind up. But hopefully that will kind of progress as we get through the season. It'll be less needing to play on instinct and almost just knowing what it should be.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to mention. It kind of brings us on to the next point about, we've hinted at a couple of times, I guess, that turning the dangerous areas into chances. It was something Gerhard spoke a lot to us about. He felt it was more in the first half than the second. That he's used bravery a lot when he's spoken to us, and I've kind of put it to him that was it just missing, I don't know, a player to have that bit of bravery to put their foot on the ball and try something different, because to me it felt almost a bit like a couple of games at home last year against teams in a lower block, because I don't think Charlton were in a low block, but probably a bit deeper, where there almost becomes this habit of, rather than trying to play that crossfield pass that might open up a bit of space, or pass it, make a couple of passes to try to move things around. Sometimes it can become a bit almost, routine is maybe the right word, that, just needs that person for a bit of bravery to put their foot on it and try something different.
Yeah, and I guess if you're playing as a defender, it becomes a lot more predictable as well, I suspect. Whereas if you've got all of a sudden Ross McCrory's bolting down the right-hand side and, I don't know, Atkinson's pinging it 40-odd yards straight onto his chest, because we know, like, Ross McCrory's first touch is sensational. If you can get the ball to him, he will beat whoever it is that he's kind of coming onto it with. Sometimes, like you say, you just need that person to get on it, try something a little bit different. If it doesn't come off, that's fine. I think most City fans will hold their hands up and go, all right, that's fine. It's gone out for a throw in, or they've won the ball back, but at least we've tried something a bit new, a bit different, for the way we typically play. Whereas when you've got to make 5 passes to get it out to Mark Sykes on the right-hand side, he's been marked by the time you get to the second pass, let alone by the time you get to the 5th. Whereas sometimes if you can kind of cut out the middleman and just have that bit of bravery, like you say, and just hit it, then you've got to make that progress a lot faster. And we did see it at times last season. was it the Norwich game, I think, when Mark Sykes' goal? It was like
Yeah,
a nice ball out from, it was possibly even a defender. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But it was one of the times last season where we just went for it and it paid off. And if you can get a lot of our attacking players in that sort of position, we are a threat. We just need to get there a little bit quicker sometimes.
yeah, and I think you've seen it in how City are warming up these days. I don't know how much you saw it before the game, but a lot of their warm up is based around getting the ball out wide to people and then smacking crosses into the box. And admittedly, you kind of do need a bit of counter, you need space to be able to make those sort of chances. But that's obviously a big way in which Gerhard Struber wants his team to attack. And I guess partly because of the way they played and partly because of how well Charlton defended on Saturday, there weren't actually many chances to swing those sort of crosses into the box. I know we mentioned the other day about different ways they've scored goals so far this season, but I do think Charlton deserve credit because they made it really hard to kind of create anything. And towards the back end of the game, they caused some real problems themselves, which I think brings us on to probably, I think he was voted supporters man of the match. I think I gave him the highest mark in my player ratings, but
yeah,
another really good showing from Radek Vitek.
100%. Nice for him to get his first clean sheet. And yeah, he just looked very, very controlled for all of the game. The only save I really remember him having to make, particularly, I think he got down low to his right-hand side at one point in the second half and managed to push it around the post for a corner. The only real sort of confusion that I remember was, I don't actually know who it was, but one of our defenders hit our own post.
Yeah, it didn't hit the post.
Oh, did it not?
It was George Tanner, and it was Vitek who saved it. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, was it? Oh,
that's what he's claimed in the post-match presser we've had. He's claimed it was a save, and I'm pretty sure it was a save because, obviously we're quite high up in the Lansdowne stand. I always joke that I know people joke about the TV view. We're pretty much the same. It's like watching it from the gods where we sit in the press box.
Yeah,
and the ball came in, and it was one of those where it was almost in slow motion, where like Tanner's leg kind of comes. He had to get something on it because I think it would have been tapped in had he not.
Yeah.
And then he was so close to the goal that as soon as you see it head towards the goal, you're like, oh well, one of those that'll be in. And I don't know how he got down as quickly as he did because the size of him. I'll mention it in a sec, but he did post-match press duties, and we've got a long interview that you can read on the Bristol Live website with him. And he came into the room, and although I knew he was tall, I could not believe the size of him when he walked through the door. He was one of those where you just feel like you're looking up, like, when does this man stop? And yeah, the way he got down to somehow not only get a hand to it, but you mentioned it last week. He doesn't just save things; he pushes them well away from danger.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a ridiculous stop, and it's so good that so many people probably did think it was off the post.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, from where I was, there were a lot of bodies to try and look past, but it certainly looked like it. Well, yeah, if it hasn't come off the post, then it's an absolutely incredible save. But we mentioned it again last week, and you've just mentioned the size of him there. His command of the box. It's the first time I've seen it properly in person, because I saw the Valladolid game, but they weren't much of a threat, with all due respect. They didn't play very well. You could tell it through the telly watching the Sheffield United game, but my word, on corners and free kicks, he is sensational. Like, I think Max O'Leary, we've mentioned it before, is a good goalkeeper in his own right, but he's never really had that command of his area down as much as Vitek does. And it was the same with Bentley. We saw it a lot. Set pieces were kind of our big downfall when he was in goal at times, because the ball would come in and he'd get a little bit flappy at points. Whereas Vitek just seems so calm, so composed. He'll come out, he'll get a big purchase on it. It's always seems to be either, if it's not a catch, which seems to be his go-to, then it'll be a strong fist or kind of a double fist punch away and just get it as far away from danger kind of as quickly as possible. Obviously, if he's caught it, then he'll keep hold of it and we can reset. But he's a massive, massive asset to the team. I just hope, having watched United play yesterday, that he doesn't get recalled at any point, because it wasn't looking great for them.
Yeah, it was one of those, wasn't it, where I think I watched it yesterday, having only just 24 hours after the end of the City's game, and I feel like I've seen about 8 corners in the 2 games Vitek's played that have been put on exactly the same place, and he has dealt with them a lot better than, is it Bayinde, I think their keeper did yesterday. But I think it sounds almost a bit stupid, but you kind of forget how valuable having a tall goalkeeper is. I think because Bristol City never really have, you kind of accept that, they're not going to win every punch, even though they've got the arms to use. You kind of accept that, whereas, you'd have to be ridiculously tall to be able to beat that man for like any header, wouldn't you? Like, it's ridiculous. And yeah, I think it's easy sometimes, isn't it, with goalkeepers that they probably get praised more than perhaps other players do when they have decent games, and given a lot more stick when they have bad games. I've said it on here before. I've said it in pieces. I really rate Max O'Leary. I think if he wasn't Bristol City's goalkeeper, supporters would probably be a bit happier with him. If he was playing for someone else, he'd probably be the sort of keeper where fans would be going, well, he's the sort of keeper we need. Yes, he makes errors, and what he does, he has had games though where he wins you points, probably not regularly though. Whereas these first 2 games of the league season, although it was the attacking players that won the points up at Sheffield United, it was Vitek who's got you a point on Saturday, and had City gone on to win, no matter who'd scored the goal, you'd have probably said he was the reason they had a hope in winning, because it was a genuinely really good performance, and one where he didn't have loads to do. So staying switched on like that in a game where he had a really quiet first half, I think is a really important asset.
Yeah, absolutely. He is genuinely probably the best goalkeeper I've seen us have so far, from what I've seen so far. I don't want to get too excited.
He's gone early with the 2 games.
In the 10, 11 years I've been going, he's certainly on track to take that crown off of Nicky Moenpar. I'm saying it. I loved that man. But
another big goalkeeper as well. Another big one.
Exactly. And like you said, we've not had many, and they do tend to stick out. But moving on to, I think, kind of the end of that week, a massive 3 games, and it's the first competitive week anyway of Gerhard Struber. What have you sort of learned the most, having been at all 3 matches? I've only been to 1. You've spoken to him as well. What's your kind of positives so far?
Yeah, I asked him the same question actually on Saturday, because I felt his response was, you learn so much from I think he calls them competition games. I see like competitive games. So those had friendlies. I think this week's kind of almost showed exactly where Bristol City are at to me. That when they are at their best and they're free flowing and attacking, they can dismantle any team in the Championship. Sheffield United was the perfect example of that, where they showed a sense of conviction. They looked dangerous every time they came forward. So that showed me that. I think MK Don showed that there is depth in some positions. I don't think we need to go over that too much, because we kind of spoke about that in last week's podcast.
Yeah.
But certainly in midfield, I think probably at number 10 and the back line, and probably at right wing back, you've got a level of depth that most Championship teams would be happy with. I think that's what I've learned from those 2 games. And then what I felt I learned from Saturday's game was that there are undoubtedly still traits there that aren't quite perfect, and no one should be expecting them to be perfect in what he's been here 7-8 weeks. But I think there's still obviously a slight interest in how they approach low blocks, because you look back when they've played them over the last 2 seasons, they have found it difficult. The biggest positive I'd say is that despite the slight change, this more attacking way of playing, the defence still looks really solid. And it's I put it in the verdict over the weekend, that it's something Liam Manning spoke about a lot, was that he felt that was his first priority when he came in, was shore up that defence, because if you have a good defence, you don't ship many goals, you're in matches. And towards the back end of last season, partly through injuries, because I think we've said a lot about after Luke McNally got injured, how short of numbers they were defensively.
Yeah.
But that stability kind of went in the running. They shipped 2 at Preston. There was the 4 at Leeds, the 3 at Luton. The Sunderland game, they conceded a really bad goal, didn't they?
Yeah.
The playoffs, obviously 6 goals. I know part of that was 10 men, but towards the back end of last season, there was a bit of concern about the goals they were conceding.
Yeah.
Even with playing a more expansive brand of football, they look incredibly defensively sound. And adding, I know we've mentioned him already, but adding a goalkeeper of Vitek's level seems to have only helped that further. So my belief is, a week in, I'm probably still similar to where I was before the Sheffield United game, where I don't quite know where they're going to finish. I think it could be anywhere from 14th, 15th up to 5th, 6th. I think they're going to be there or thereabouts. But I think there's more to be positive about than negative about. And had you had the offer of 4 points from those opening 2 league games and progression in the cup before the trip to Bramall Lane, you'd have undoubtedly taken that. And if you say you wouldn't have, you'd probably either very optimistic or lying, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the old age sort of, Well, yeah, you would have taken the 4 points.
Mm.
But once you've beaten Sheffield United,
Yeah, of course.
you want 6, don't you? But, if you reverse those results and we draw 0-0 at Bramall Lane and win 4-1 on Saturday, everyone's going to be buzzing.
Yeah,
no one will be looking at it as we've had this incredible start and then maybe drop to level very slightly. Everyone will be going, right, okay, good point at Bramall Lane, smash Charlton, excellent, let's go to Derby and do the same. Whereas if the City that played at Bramall Lane with that kind of conviction, like you mentioned a second ago, turn up on Friday night at Derby, I think we could blow them away. We saw them ship 5 at the weekend in the end. Was it 4 or 5 to?
Yes, 5, wasn't it?
5-3 in the end, and they were leading a couple of times in that game as well. So there's certainly a strong sense of hope and optimism around Ashton Gate once again, which is nice that it may be slightly tapered after the playoffs. We were like, okay, we've got here, but then we weren't very good at all once we got there. And it looks like we're heading back in the right direction again, which is good to see.
Yeah, I think it's a manager's favourite saying, isn't it? But because it's 46 games before you play cup games, it's genuinely a marathon. And I think you'd be incredibly naive to assume that a group that were not, although they were consistent second half of last year, City kind of went through peaks and troughs through the campaign. I think you'd be naive to think with a change of manager and just, let's say it's 4 signings, but only 3 of them are ever going to play at the same time because 2 of them are goalkeepers. I think if you thought it was going to be plain sailing after Sheffield United, you were in cuckoo land anyway. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it was never going to be plain sailing. I almost think that Saturday might be the perfect sort of game to drop points in early on, just against the team that are flying high after the playoffs. Just to kind of remind people that this is we're not going to blow teams away every week. That's not how this division works. Nobody does that. But equally, there'll be a bit of unrest because people that didn't see the Sheffield United game will have only seen Saturday and thought, oh God, what's everyone on about? This isn't quite the sexy football, we've been promised. So I think, he said it himself. He was asked if he was happy if he felt 4 from 6 was a good start. And he said, yes. I think his answer was something as simple as yes, but 6 from 6 would have been even better. So him and the players are by no means settling for this start. But I don't think there's any need to be like throwing toys at the pram or cause for concern just because of a 0-0.
No, not at all. Don't get me wrong. If we turned up at home on Saturday and lost 3-0 and Charlton had played us off the park, or we were just terrible, then you've got a lot more reason for those sort of concerns or issues to creep in a little bit. But we didn't. Like you said, both teams played well. Both teams kind of cancelled each other out. We weren't at our best by any means. To be fair, they might not have been at their best. We don't really know yet. It's one of those where they're newly promoted. They could very well, all right, they might not have recruited quite as well, but we saw Ipswich do the double bounce 2 years ago. There's nothing to say that Charlton don't turn out to finish 8th this season, and that becomes a good point.
I mean, having seen them now, you'd be very surprised if they go down if they play like that all year. That they are riding the wave, that they've come up. They've obviously come up through the playoffs, which always gives you momentum anyway. City, when they got promoted from League One, got in the playoffs the next year, didn't they? In the Championship in 2008. So, you ride a wave. They've then started their Championship season by scoring in the 94th minute to beat Watford in front of a packed out Valley. So that would have been rocking. That would have given confidence. Nathan Jones is the sort of manager who's going to big you up at the head of this sort of game anyway.
Yeah,
and they've got through the Carabao Cup while making 10 changes. I think it's easy, isn't it? And I think I put in pieces that City were favourites, and undoubtedly they probably were considering where the two clubs were last year. But I don't think it's not one of those 0-0s where you're going, oh my God, how have we drawn to them? I think back to there was a bit do you remember the Swansea game last February where City lost 1-0? City lost 1-0. They hadn't won a game either side of it for ages. Luke Williams was sacked a week later. Yeah. And it was one of those where in the season you're going, oh my God, we've lost to them. That was a bad one. Obviously time might change how you view this Charlton one, but I don't think it'll be one of those where at the end of the year you're thinking that was the difference between us being here or here. It's my gut feeling.
No, like you said, I can't see them being in any sort of trouble this season. You'd be absolutely amazed if you turn around and they were relegated by any sort of distance at least come the end of the season, I can easily see them finishing anywhere from sort of 19th to 12th. You know, they look like a solid championship outfit. They've recruited well. Tyrese Campbell impressed me on Saturday. I thought he had a decent game. But like you say, yeah, they're riding that wave. They've done well. And speaking of good recruitment, you've obviously spoken to Struber. Is there any sort of update on the transfer front?
Well, I think we'll start with what was said pre-match on Friday. You know, the pieces out there. I think it was pretty well viewed. People did see it. You know, his words were, I think he said he had a very good feeling that he keeps using the phrase one or other. And I think we've said it on here. One or other to me probably means one or two through the door. So we'll play a clip now of what he said post-match to ITV on Saturday. So he was just asked if that had changed in the 24 hours before the game and after the game, whether what he'd seen in the game had changed his approach. So here's what he had to say on that.
Yes, of course. But the game today or the game in Sheffield makes no difference in this direction. I have a clear plan what I want together with our management, and we will do everything the next few days that we realize that. Yeah, so we will see what's going on to do it. I think I told you that the championship is so long. We have so many games, and of course we need a big roster, and we need, of course, also players. They can help in a way what we want, and also the expectation is on a good level here.
So it's very clear from what Gerhard said to us, Jack, is it feels to me like he's probably got people, or at least positions, in mind of what he wants. Tom Rawcliffe was also on BBC Radio Bristol on Saturday. We're going to put together a bit of a roundup of that piece on Tuesday to go out. But I think his assumption, his verdict, which I think was quite similar to what most people have expected him to say, was that, you know, City are very much still a trading club, and if people are going to come in, people probably need to head out, which is no different to what we've said before, because we mentioned the fact Josh Stokes, Elijah Morris and Efram Yeboah aren't even getting in the squad. You can throw Jamie Knight-Nobel and Adam Murphy into that as well. Yeah. Alternatively, on Tuesday, Harry Cornick and Fally Mayulu get left out when you bring the young lads in. So it's still quite, and that's before. We've got to remember Luke Manali, Max O'Leary, Cam Pring, Joe Williams are all still not involved. You know, there is a lot of players involved, and it would not. I think it's only common sense that if you're going to recruit more need to go out. I think from a fan's point of view, does that kind of make sense to you, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I read through a little bit of that Tom Rawcliffe interview, and the main thing that stood out to me is we have to be a selling club because of financial fair play at the moment. I think we mentioned it. I think this is the last year having.
I think
now so. It's been 2 years. It's the last year that Alex Scott and maybe even some of the Semenyo money is in the kitty.
Not sure on Semenyo. I think definitely the Alex Scott. I couldn't be sure saying Semenyo.
Right.
I think,
but definitely we know, what was it, 25 million in the end, roughly, for Alex Scott. So that's a big chunk of money to go into the sort of financial fair play kitty. So yeah, you know, we can't go out and spend ridiculous money this summer. We haven't got it there to spend. And yeah, you're going to need to move on. It's unlikely, I think, realistically, that we get another striker through the door, is kind of what my gut feeling would say. We've mentioned it recently. We've already got, 7 strikers at the club, or 7 people that could play as a striker, whether you count sort of Sam Bell and Harry Cornick as out-and-out strikers is kind of personal opinion, I suppose. But you'd think if we're only going to be able to get one and not the other, then it's probably going to be a left-back/left wing-back and try and look at moving on someone else from that sort of long list of people who aren't always getting in the squad.
Yeah, I think I feel like we've almost said the same thing over and over. Do you know what I mean? But it's that sort of thing of every football club in the 92 will want another striker. They are the most expensive deal to get done, and they're an even more expensive deal to justify. Let's say if you're Gerhard or if you're one of the recruitment team and you go to Tom Rawcliffe or John Lansdowne or Steve Lansdowne and say, right, we've decided we found this striker, we like him, we're going to pay X fee and also whatever wages. Oh, and we're going to add that to a list of players that there's already 7 strikers on there that we've paid fees for and we're paying wages for every week, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, I imagine if every club's always looking, I imagine if there is a deal, whether it be a loan or a permanent, where City are like, oh my God, that's one we need to do. it'll get done. We saw that last year with, Scott Twine, Luke McNally late on. It was that thing of, okay, this is a player we really like. We've liked for a long time. He's available. Maybe he wasn't in our plans this summer, but we'll go do it. I think you never say never to a striker coming in, but you have to imagine people are going to have to go out first. Left back, a bit more similar, but, Hayden Roberts hasn't played a competitive minute of football yet this season.
Yeah.
I think he probably feels he's more of a left-sided centre-back than a left wing-back in this formation. You've got Elijah, who Gerhard's kind of said, he's moving in the right direction, but probably isn't ready to play week in, week out in the Championship at this stage.
Yeah.
So, yes, you've got Campring, but Campring's not fit. Is still weeks away, and his injury record over the last few seasons is slightly concerning. It's not. I don't think it's a big concern because they're kind of weird injuries, but he has picked up muscle injuries. The way he plays, he's going to pick those up. Tane Anderson might have been one that they thought about getting involved sooner after his spell at Cheltenham, but he's picked up an injury now, so that's kind of that. Whether that would even be an option in January now looks probably a bit different. So you're at a stage where, to me, if you only go get one, I think left back is probably the one that you can do financially, and one that you probably need more than the striker. I think maybe I'm sure there'll be people that disagree with that, but I don't know.
I'm with you on that. I think Yu Hirakawa as a left wing back works to some degree, but we all know he's not an out and out defender by any means. He can get a foot on the ball and he'll do his best, bless him, but he's not exactly going to use much brute force, is he? He's a very, very good footballer, but I'd like to see him in a more attacking role, as playing as one of those 10/wingers, whatever it is we're kind of still calling them, than having to be playing as a left wing back. And you'd assume that as soon as Campring's ready to go, he comes back into that fold. It's just whether or not there's someone ahead of him by that point.
Yeah, and Gerhard, if you look back to basically every interview we've done where we've mentioned transfers, he has mentioned needing a big roster, as he puts it. He feels if they want to compete on all fronts with a 46-game season, he needs options. And if you said that you have Campering, Elijah Morrison, and you Hirakawa as your left wing back options, most fans would probably think, yeah, you're kind of happy with that. Is that at a level of a club that is definitely going to get in the playoffs? I don't know. I think, especially because of how important the wing backs have been to what we've seen from the way Struber wants to play at the moment. I also think the biggest caveat to all of this is, yes, he's playing a back three at the moment, but he has used a back four before, and there's every chance he'll go back to a back four. And if you're playing a back four, I'm not sure you can play as the left back.
No.
Campering can, yes. Maybe Hayden Roberts becomes more involved, but even Elijah Morrison's been, most of his football's come in that more advanced sort of position. So I don't like to use the sort of like Lee Johnson clubs in the bag sort of phrase, but that almost feels a bit where we are to me, that you feel like you need another club in that position just to make sure. And yeah, you could say the same at striker, but they're expensive deals to do, aren't they? They are. So until someone gets going, it comes as a surprise. Yeah,
and you'd hope that. I mean, I said this last season as well. To be fair, given the amount of options we have up front, you'd hope Mayulu's shown a little bit more this past weekend. Reece is, naturally still adapting to being at the club, things like that. But you'd like to think that between the kind of probably four that we're going to see consistently in Reece, Armstrong, Mayulu, and then either probably Yeboah or Bell will probably be the extra one, for want of a better word. You'd like to think that between them, they can chip in with a reasonable amount of goals. It might not be one of them getting 20 odd, but if they can kind of get 7-ish each, at least sort of Reece and whoever ends up being his kind of main partner between Armstrong and Mayulu, if they can chip in with a few each, then that'd be handy, because a lot of it fell on Naki Wells last season with Mayulu getting 2. How many did Armstrong end up in the end with? Was it
3? I think it's
3, 4, something like that. It wasn't many, was it? So hopefully he can improve on that this season as well.
Yeah, and undoubtedly, the point of what we've been told by, Liam said it. I think Gerhard said it, and I know both Tom and Brian Tinian have said it, is that these were players signed to progress. they were never designed just to come in. Well, we're told they were never assigned to come in and hit the ground running last season. So if that's the case, you'd hope they should only get better this year as the season goes on. Whether or not that's at Bristol City, you don't know till the 1st of September, 2nd of September, once the window's closed. So, I understand everyone's going to want a striker, and I wouldn't rule it out, because if, like I said, if the right one becomes available for a reasonable fee, I'm sure they'll be more than willing to do it. I just imagine, again, this is more gut feeling, that they probably sit there and go, a left back's a need, a striker would be a want if you can't get one. And maybe they get both what they need and what they want. Maybe they only get what they want and not what they need. You don't really know till the window's said and done.
Yeah, not at all. And we've still got a little while left on it as well. Yeah,
exactly. What we're talking, still nearly 2 weeks. So, they'll be active till the end. Every club's active till the last day now, whether that be in or out. And I think that's an important thing to stress. We've said it time and time again, and it's not really got rolling yet. But there will be more people heading out, you'd have thought, because that squad is bloated. There are people in there who must realise they're probably not going to get loads of football. And like we've said before, you need a club to buy them and you need them to be interested in the move. But you'd imagine as we get closer to the end of the window, those things start to tend to chug along a bit quicker.
Yeah, and I think as we get nearer the end of the window, someone like Hayden Roberts, for example, it's been kind of reported here and there that he wants to move on because of a lack of game time and things like that. You'd kind of assume that if we get to, let's say, after this Derby game and after the Fulham game, if he's still not really getting minutes, his kind of demands as to where he goes might change. If he wants to play football that much, is he willing to drop maybe a little bit further down than he'd have initially chosen to, or something like that? It'll be interesting to wait and see what kind of comes from those sort of things.
Yeah, I think it also depends where City are at. If they sign another left back, like I think they might, that becomes an easier deal to sanction. If Cam Pring's recovery speeds up, maybe that becomes a bit of an easier deal to sanction. If you definitely decide Elijah Morrison won't go out on loan, it becomes a bit easy, and that's not just for Hayden, that's for people in various positions. If they got another striker, maybe that changes what you do with Fally and Harry Cornick or Sam Bell. I think people use it. It's almost like what's the game where you've got the tower and you pull out the blocks?
Jenga.
It's like a sort of Jenga tower, isn't it? Where you almost need a couple of blocks to start wobbling, and then the whole thing can fall and start getting moving. And that's almost how I feel at the moment. Is that and you look up and down the divisions this summer. Football transfer market has probably not been the same since COVID. The days of hundreds of millions going around here, there, everywhere kind of have slowed down slightly. And you're seeing it at Liverpool with Isak, you're seeing it elsewhere. It's people a bit more measured in their approach, and that probably just means things are a bit slower. But now that games are up and running, people are picking up injuries, and the EFL Trophy starts next week. You've got Carabao Cup. There's so many games happening that people are going to start to think, oh God, we need this, or okay, we don't need this person and he's available. And City might go, oh, that's exactly what we've been looking for. Things tend to speed up once football starts being played and people know where they stand. And, we're in that stage now of the last 2 weeks of the window where games are happening at the same time. So, I think it'd be interesting, I think, the end of the window. But obviously, before any of that, we've got trip to Pride Park on Friday night. Are you heading up, Jack, or you be watching on Sky?
I'll be there, mate. I'll be there. No holidays this week.
No holidays. Committed. Well,
100%.
You've mentioned holidays, so I better bring it up. I am actually missing the Fulham game because I'm.
Why is that, Dan?
I've got a day's holiday booked, so that's all I will say. But that's gone down. That's gone down well. Another game.
Well, let's just say it's a good job that Fulham don't play in yellow. But
I'm missing that bit. But anyway, that's not till next week, so we'll leave that. But Derby, how you feel? I guess probably if we start on the team, you mentioned it earlier. Rob Dickie in for you, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's nothing wrong with the defence as such. I just prefer having three centre-backs who are absolutely a centre-back than two centre-backs and what I'd still call George Tanner a right-back more than a centre-back. Playing there, I think Dickie offers us a little bit kind of more physicality. He's better in the air, things like that. And I'd rather have him in there from the start, I think.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I wouldn't be surprised. if that were the case. I guess the other kind, it's hard to really think of any other question marks with the team, isn't it? Because you kind of feel like most of that team probably picks itself. I guess the big one will be Max Bird, a week further along recovery, played basically a half on Saturday. Maybe he could start. Like I said, we're hearing from Gerhard on Wednesday or Thursday this week, so I'm sure he'll give us a bit more insight then of where he's at. But other than that, it's hard to see, unless new signings come in, which would be a nice surprise, wouldn't it, for all of us? It's hard to see too many changes, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the only one you'd even consider, and he might not consider it, is bringing in Dickey from the start. It might be that Atkinson comes out for Dickey instead. It kind of all depends on where he's at after another 90 minutes in the tank. He did get the full 90, didn't he?
Yeah, he did get the full 90, despite having the Undertaker moment let down in the turf before, yeah,
it did have me worried for a minute. But yeah, I'm fairly confident, I think, going up to Pride Park. I think we've seen that they ship goals so far. I think is it 8 they've conceded in the 2 games so far?
I think so. It's definitely 5 at the weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the 3-1 loss at Hull the week, not Hull, sorry, Stoke the week before. But we also know they can score. They've scored 4. We've scored 4. So hopefully we're going up there for a bit of if we can get a 5-3, that'd be excellent. Just like they had at the weekend. We'll have all sorts to talk about next week.
Yeah, that'd be great. What was it? Gerhard called Saturday's game a ping-pong fight, so I don't know what he'd quite call a 5-3. I can't imagine.
Full-blown Wimbledon final, that is.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think it's. I wrote in the verdict, I don't feel any less confident in them having seen Saturday than I did before. I think Saturday was just a tough old game, and you're going to get those across the championship season. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the same on Friday night, if it is hard work. But yeah, I think there's still a sense of excitement, isn't there, heading up there? It's not a case of, oh God, we've got to go watch Bristol City, which I'm not saying it was last season, but
yeah.
And, they've got that win away from home, which hopefully lifts spirits heading up there. But I will say, Friday night game, pros and cons there. The massive pro is pretty much a weekend off, and the biggest con is being in Pride Park till about midnight.
Get yourself in the travel lodge that's attached to the ground, mate. That's what I've done. Straight in there. But yeah, we are going to go with predictions now. I reckon if we're agreeing, there's probably not going to be many, if any, changes to the team. I'm going to go a bit less bold than I did last week. I'm going to go for a 1-0 City win. I reckon. Just
any
about.
Emil
Rees will finally score, hopefully.
Okay, I'm going to go a bit more out there and say 2-2. I think
Desmond.
Again, a point away from home is pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, Desmond, exactly. A point away from home, you can never really complain with, even if it is against a team that ship goals. But yeah, I don't think that'd be an awful result. But yeah, I don't think it's an easy game. I don't think that. Well, it's a proper cliche, so I'll get it in and get the book in early. But it is. There's no easy game in the Championship, is there? So it's not. You don't expect anyone to be a walkover, but yeah. I still feel a bit like I don't quite know what to expect from Struber's team, and that's almost a bit exciting. But if they play to the level we saw at Sheffield United, they'll beat anyone, and maybe being away from home will sort of suit them a bit better. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I don't know if the players or Struber will feel this. It might be something to possibly mention tomorrow, but almost less pressure. There's only 1,600, I think, 1,700 City fans going up on Friday night. It's very different to playing in front of, well, if you take out the Charlton fans, about 22,000 City fans on Saturday afternoon. I don't know if the players feel that or not. It might be kind of completely unrelated, but it'll be interesting definitely to see how we manage that sort of game. And Derby's a tough place to go as well. I remember being there last season when they beat us 3-0, and their fans get the place rocking sometimes, to be fair.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, I wasn't at that game, but I do remember watching it. It was before I started, but I remember being one of those. City could have probably actually won it in the first half, couldn't they? And then to lose in that way. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. Obviously, a few familiar faces on both sides. Jason Knight, Hayden Roberts, and Max Bird all played up there. Then you've got Andy Vyman up there now, and I don't think he's played. I doubt he'll play, but Richard O'Donnell's one of their goalkeepers. So yeah, it's quite. I don't know. It's new ground for me as well. New ground to tick off. So hopefully I'll be able to have a good press food review for next week, because we had some lovely meatballs and pasta on Saturday that Bristol City deserve credit for. So
we've gone international. Sounds good.
Oh yeah, they don't miss Ashton Gate, I'll tell you. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps us up for today. Obviously not the most exciting game to talk about, but I think we've picked up on the main talking points. So we'll be back again next week for probably to review the Derby game. It's bank holiday, isn't it? So maybe a bit later than usual. Maybe we'll find time in our busy schedules over the bank holiday to do something.
Yeah, hopefully.
But if not, we'll definitely have something with you. And then not actually too long to go to the international break after that. Only one more game. Well, I'm Fulham, but obviously that doesn't count because I'm not there. So
yeah, and nor am I now. So
there we go.
Well,
so yeah, we might have to miss that one. But yeah, thank you for tuning in again for another episode, and thanks to Jack for his time as per usual. I hope you have a good rest of your week and a good time.
Yeah, pleasure as always. Make sure you subscribe if you're listening. Leave a like, subscribe, push it a little bit. It'd be nice. Thank you very much.